Hi, my name is Dan Zeilinger, and I have been a world-traveling full-time trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of my most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials across the world. I've met many people during my career and have spent many hours on stage and off with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on the weekends with friends. I think they all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, I'll be sharing them with you. Hi, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today. My next interview is a dear friend and somebody that we've he and I have crossed paths several times, and hopefully we've avoided running into each other. But a comedian, percussionist, a wonderful drummer. We keep running into each other at jazz clubs for some reason. And in fact, last time I saw you was we both went to watch Matt Johnson.
Yes, we did.
And commented on how he's our favorite among today's drummers. And here he is, Mr. Dick Hardwick, sir.
Hello, everybody. It's mighty nice to greet you. Dun, 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 dun.
Is that a W.F. Ludwig snare drum I see behind you?
It is. It's an old field drum that I restored. And I was playing that at Disneyland with Doug and Bob All, Doug Maddox and Bob All, in our little quintet or quartet trio, whatever we could afford, called the Hollywood Big Shots. And we consider ourselves big shots because we owned our own outfits.
That's actually important for contractors.
Yes, indeed.
Tell me about when you guys came out here from, what was it, North Carolina?
Well, I mean, to start at the beginning, I had a rock and roll band and a country band in high school.
Let's go back earlier than that. Where were you born?
Well, Greencastle, Indiana, which is the land of opportunity if you're a tractor.
Phnom
Penh.
I use that line.
Where's my drum set now? I need to get myself my own rim shot.
What's wonderful about that line is your basic routine, come to think of it, that both you and your brother and occasionally a few other people have used almost that exact routine at times.
Yeah, well, you know, I always say I hope they can get some laughs with it because I can't.
Oh, bull.
Oh, no. You know, I used to tell my brother Denny, he used to do my entire act over at the Disneyland Hotel when I was doing it at the Golden Horseshoe at Disneyland. And then one night I said, Denny, you got to stop using my act. He goes, well, write me some new jokes. So what are you going to do for your brother Denny?
Yeah, that's true. Of course, I spent some time with Denny on the Southern Comfort Band.
Yeah.
And,
his first big claim to fame, really, except for, you know, transcribing Joe Pass's third solo album. That was a pretty big deal.
Well, I don't know what happened in the Hardwick family back in the beginning, but you guys are just wonderful cats and talented and funny and nice. You got to stop that.
Well, you know, they always say you get more with sugar than you do with lemon juice.
Well, I guess. Were your parents musical?
Well, our dad played the string bass, and he had a little band on. They would play at the Elks Lodge and the Moose Lodge, and so we were always around music. Mom chorded around on the piano, and our grandfather was kind of like the jack of all trades. He played the guitar and the violin and the saxophone, and as young kids, we were always around music and laughter. And I had a couple crazy uncles, and there were always jokes, and they were, you know, just using language like parents would use their language. But our parents, you know, when they told a joke, they used all the words and stuff. So I grew up with no fear of just trying to be funny and go for it.
Yeah, I always thought that Doug was a third Hardwick at times. Well,
yeah,
just because your routines kind of circle around each other a little bit.
Well, we sure do. He's coming over this afternoon. We have a video project that's going to be aired on a private network for a club that I belong to in San Francisco, which you're probably familiar with. And
I think I played at that club actually.
Have you really?
And
yeah.
at the camp.
At the camp. So did you stay at Doghouse?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
I met Freddie Travelina there, and
sure.
and I felt so at home, sitting around the campfire with a bunch of comedy writers, And it's then I realized that I wasn't mentally impaired. I was just a comic writer. But you know what I'm saying?
I do.
When you find people that connect with you and don't mind your sense of humor and the things that you think about, that's rare.
It sure is. Yeah. Well, it's nice to be on a one-to-one basis with everybody and first name basis. And, that's my career in traditional jazz has spread out all over different areas. And that's one of the areas I've been able to stay active in playing that kind of music, which is, like you said, where did I start? Well, playing the drums in these bands, but I didn't start really getting popular in Greencastle until my dad and one of his best buddies got us, my friend Robin Hopkins, who's a banjo player that we went to New Orleans to the Mardi Gras when we were 18 years old. And my aunt and uncle lived in New Orleans and gave me an opportunity to come down there during that Mardi Gras in 1971. And that's where I didn't know this, but Robin had a $100 bill in his hand and went up to the doorman at Pete Fountain's Club and handed it to him and said, "We want to sit down front." And I'll be doggone, we're 18 years old. They shuffled us in the front row and the curtain went up at Pete Fountain's and the world went round and round.
Wow.
It really changed my life because the drummer did a drum solo, came down off the drums, played down on the floor, came down and played on all the glasses and back around to the drums and the light went off in my head. I can do that. And that was pretty much my trigger to get not only to play the drums with Dixieland music, but to be able to expand as a comedian, as an entertainer as well.
Well, just to let you know, the reason this show is called Trad Jazz Today is because it's become politically incorrect to say Dixieland.
Yeah.
And also, it's just a hook for putting together a contingent of both viewers and musicians that I've met playing Dixieland. But a good example, and I use this as recently, is I interviewed John Van Houten, who is the guy for studio work in LA on tuba. And nobody can imagine why he would come on this channel and talk to me. But he actually started with me in a Lou Waters style band in Fullerton in the late 90s when he was dipping his toe into tuba playing. And so he came on to do the show, and he's done every sound. If you've been to the movies in the last 30 years, you've heard John Van Houten. But
yeah.
So what I'm saying is you don't have to really worry about connecting this to trad all the time if you don't want to.
Well, it's Dixieland, ragtime, all those. Robin and I went back down to New Orleans when I just barely turned 19, and we decided to try to get a gig in the French Quarter, and him on the banjo, me on the drums. And because in Greencastle, my dad got us this gig at the Legion and the VFW and the Moose Lodge, and we started packing it up with just him on the banjo and me on the drums, singing all the songs that they like to hear. Really, it just gave them another reason to start drinking earlier and staying later. But we thought we were pretty good, and I could play the drums really well. Robin could bang out. We had a lot of youth on our side and a lot of enthusiasm. And so we went to New Orleans, and my aunt and uncle allowed us to stay at their house. And we decided to go down and join the union. We thought that would be the way you could start out as a musician. And they charged us $150 a piece and said, don't let the door hit you in the rear end on the way out. And we said, well, we need to get some business cards made. We've never been to New Orleans. Just during the Mardi Gras, would you give a recommendation of where we could get those printed up? And the president of the union there in New Orleans said, well, there's a union printer on Toulouse Street down in the French Quarter. Go down and have him do your cards. So we went down. Sure enough, right there in Toulouse Street, just below Royal Street, was this little print shop with all the old typesetting and all that stuff, and an older gentleman with white hair and the little horn-rimmed glasses down like that, and he had his vest on that had ink all over it and stuff. We went in and we said, we're musicians, we just got here, we want to make a business card. And he looked at us and smiled and he said, so you're looking for a gig, huh? We said, yes. He said, well, let me call somebody. He called Jim Monahan, who owned Molly's at the Market and Molly's Irish Pub right down the street. And he got us an audition. I'll be doggone if they didn't hire us. And that was him on the banjo, me on the drums. And that was our first gig. And 4 hours on Friday night, 4 hours on Saturday afternoon, 4 hours on Sunday, and the pay was $60 a piece for the entire weekend, and all the beer we could drink.
What year was this now?
What's that?
What year was this?
1972.
You could have put them out of business with the beer.
Well, you know what? After the first weekend, he came to us and with a smile on his face, he said, "I want to renegotiate my verbal contract. I'll give you $60 a piece and support your beer habit," because we drank a keg of beer over the weekend.
That's what. How did comedy come into it? Was that just a matter of trying to fill between tunes, or dealing with drunks, or how did that happen?
Well, it pretty much started when I was a kid in junior high. We had a rock and roll band, and everybody wanted to look cool and pose and try to be like the Doors or the Beatles or whatever. There I am stuck back there on the drums, and I sang in the band. And so I would just naturally start talking to fill the space. And it just came natural to me. So when Robin and I ended up on the Delta Queen Steamboat, it just the natural of me to MC in between the songs and the jokes. And there was an interlocutor named Vic Tooker. People that would remember the musicians on the Mississippi. Vic had all kinds of shtick, and I stole. No, I didn't steal it. I borrowed a lot of his routines, and that kind of gave me some sawdust to throw into an act when I started putting an act together. And so from Doug Maddox and I formed our little trio, the Tin Rainbow Ragtimers, on the Delta Queen, and went to St. Louis and started playing with Steve Stubby Heist and Steve Pistorius. We're both piano players at different times, and we worked on the Robert E. Lee down underneath the arch for almost all of 1976. And that's where we met at the Ragtime Festival.
How did you and Doug meet?
Doug and I met, he was playing with his group, the Tin Rainbow Ragtimers, 1972 at the Levy Lounge at the end of Canal Street in New Orleans. And when Robin and I landed that first gig, we went out to see who else was playing in the French Quarter, and ended up mesmerized at Doug Maddox and his piano player and drummer. And his drummer was a Marine drummer, and they were lightning. And I'd never heard anybody play the banjo like Doug. He still is considered one of the better banjo players, if not the best multi-banjo, 5-string, tenor, and plectrum banjo player in the country.
Which reminds me, you need to get on him about giving me an interview.
Well, I'll ask him this afternoon.
No, there's no asking. I've asked him like 6 times now with no reply, and I'm just tired of it, because when you talk to Doug Maddox, it's automatically entertaining. Anyway.
He's going to cut it on and cut it off. He's become quite the video editor as well.
Yes, I know. He that was one of his excuses, but that he spent so much time editing video that he didn't know if he had time to do anything else on the computer. But you just give him what for me. So
well,
listen, go ahead.
I wanted to tell you that when during the summer 1976, the Goldenrod Showboat, which was docked right just north of the Robert E. Lee on the Mississippi, right underneath the arch, they would have a ragtime festival. And that's where I met Turk Murphy, and who was playing cornet with Turk, but Dan Coleman's. And the Hot Frogs Jumpin' Jazz Band were there, and that's where we met Joe Ashworth and Mike Silverman. And when we moved out to California, who did we call but Mike Silverman? And I ended up playing the drums with the Hot Frogs. Doug played banjo with the Hot Frogs on a couple of their albums. And Dan Coleman became my accountant, and he's still my accountant.
Yeah,
so those are very, very artful days for us.
If you check this channel out on YouTube, I interviewed Dan Coleman's.
Really? Okay.
And I was the guy who killed the Hot Frogs.
Oh, you did.
I was the last tuba player on that band.
The last tuba player. Well. And
I hold that credit to high esteem, to let you know.
I've never worked and recorded so much and got paid so little.
Oh God, I understand that for sure. But yeah, so that's kind of interesting. For some reason, I didn't know that you played with the Frogs.
Yeah,
I know Doug did, but he never talks about you. So no, I'm just kidding.
Well, no, just yeah, we played well, and then we started playing with Conrad Janis and the Beverly Hills Enlisted Jazz Band, and so we still work every Thursday night with Conrad. Of course, the pandemic has closed that down, but we've been doing that every for like the last 3 years.
Yeah, I understand he's getting a couple of people together and just jamming at his house.
Yeah. Well, it's a trad jazz band. That's for sure.
I actually subbed for Westie 3 or 4 times. When he was at Lunaria. So.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Great players went through that band.
Oh sure, yeah. Well, Plaz Johnson and the great drummer. His name escapes me. He's so great. But
I know who you're talking about. In fact, he used to play with Maynard Ferguson, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, not to mention Gene Sheldon, Jack Sheldon.
Oh, Jack Sheldon, sure.
And all those guys. What's it, on piano? You had.
We had Arnie Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just no slouches there.
No.
And of course, Connie's just wonderful. I asked him one night why he played like he did. And he says, well, it's just what I like. It's the way I like to play. He goes, I understand that people don't quite understand the style I play, but it's rooted in traditional jazz, and it's what I like. So
yeah,
that shut me up.
He likes the tailgate and trombone, and he likes to play as loud and as hard as he can.
Well, if you talk to Connie, please say hi for me.
I will do that. I'll be talking to them here this week, and they have they've got people that are helping them now. They're pretty much have to sit in a chair all day long. So it's a sad situation, but that's what happens when you get older.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I'm no longer that I ain't a youngin' anymore.
Well,
that's for sure. I'm
getting so old they've discontinued my blood type.
Whoa! Hang on. Let me write that down.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a couple of jokes for Doug at one time, and I wrote a lot for Westie actually, but I can't do that. I can't. People have asked me how come I haven't gone into stand-up myself, and it's just because I can't remember anything. I'm seriously. I can be spontaneously funny, but I can't remember an act. I can't.
Who was the guy that Westie loved that wrote all the funny songs?
Oh, that was me.
And there was another gentleman
I wrote the Fat Man's Lament.
Yeah.
We smelled pizzas from a mile away. That was mine. And Does Your Mother Know You're Irish was a collaboration. Actually, it started out with Dan Barrett and Howard Alden came up with the concept when we were on our way over to Ireland for a tour. And it was just a concept. He goes, we could craft the perfect Irish song as long as we talk about, let's see, what would be a title? Does Your Mother Know You're Irish? And so I took that and ran with it, and I actually wrote a tune and showed it to Westie, and he goes, I got to use that.
And he did.
And he did. Does your mother know you're Irish? Was your father Irish too? Did your mother know you're Irish? Did your mother know your father? Did she sing the song to you? Anyway. So I wrote a lot of that stuff. Actually, I wrote his opening line, "Do you think these socks make me look fat?" I actually wrote that. And I wrote a lot of his stuff, but it's okay. I love Westie. As a comedian, the only problem he had is he loved long stories.
Yeah.
And he'd want to tell a 10-minute, 15-minute story. And you can't do that when you're on stage at the Ice House,
No, but you know what? As Westie's widow, Sharon, said, if you loved Westie, you loved all of him. And part of Westie, and you had to. But one time he started telling a story, and it lasted so long my clothes went out of style and came back into style.
I talked to Sharon 2 weeks ago, and one of the things I'm planning is I want to do a watch party, a multiple hangout on this channel eventually, with everybody who wants to tell a joke about Westie, and have her and the boys on there too. And I think that'll be fun. We'll do that maybe in a month or so. Yeah,
that sounds fun.
And if you're up for that, I'll even include you on the panel.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Wouldn't that be fun?
It would be fun. Yes.
Okay, so more about you, my friend. Now, how long were you at Disney?
Well, I started there in July of 1978 in the Banjo Kings and the Class of 27 show. Unfortunately, two washboard players had to be let go for me to continue to keep my job, which was the washboard player, Bob Raggio, was let loose to put me in the show. And Howard Alden was the one that actually called up Sonny Anderson and went down and auditioned with me. So Howard pays for nothing for the rest of his life, as far as I'm concerned. So he changed my life. But it was Sonny Helmer and John Reynolds, and so I was in that show. And then they got me another show, and the Class of 27 show went to the evening show went to the Yahoo Review, and that's where I kind of started showing up as a comedian. And Wally Bogue asked me to understudy him as the comic in the Golden Horseshoe. And about that time, they told me to put together a band that could play bluegrass in the morning and Dixieland in the afternoon. And that's when I was able to get Doug back back into Disneyland, and John Jorgensen and Charlie Warren. And then in 1981, I think Wally retired and I got to take his place. So it was the toughest thing I had done up to that point in my life was to leave that band, because it really was like a little family. But the comedy was calling, and it was the right thing to do. Met my wife, Claudia, can dancer in the show. So we've been married on 36 years, I guess, something like that.
She's a wonderful woman. And I hope you don't mind me saying, not too hard to look at either.
That's true. She's snapped a little gristle in her life. People going, ooh, so look at that. Yeah.
Somebody posted recently, Howard, a clip of Howard with the Banjo Kings on Washboard online.
Uh-huh.
And I interviewed Howard, and he was so glad I brought that up.
You know what? I still have that washboard, and it hangs in my dressing room or my actual cabin up at the camp.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That, amazing. The people we've both played with over the years is pretty astounding when we think back and reflect on the people and the personalities we've known.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think it could ever be done like this ever again. And as small of a world as it is, it seems like our little clique of people throughout, from John Jorgensen to all the traditional jazz players, and we've all touched one another in lovely ways.
Yeah. Actually, I'm still trying to talk John Jorgensen into coming on for an interview, because I just wanted to shock his current world when they find out that the last job I did with John was actually a thing that Rusty called, and it was a surf band that we did on the beach. So I had to use an upright.
Oh, wow.
And me trying to play Help Me Rhonda on upright was hilarious in itself. But that was the last time I actually got to play with John.
Well, and we recorded a song the year before last called Grits. A friend of mine I met on a cruise ship had some lyrics, and I wrote the music to it. And I ended up debuting that song on the Grand Ole Opry, which is pretty cool.
You know what? It's kind of funny. I had a chance to play the Opry with Banjo Mania.
Yeah.
And at the time, they were telling me that I was the first sousaphone player ever to play the Opry. Actually, I have my tuba there, my concert tuba.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of funny in itself. You know, I would think that Danny Davis and one of these guys would have a tuba player, but evidently not. So
well,
let's talk a little bit about being a musician on the cruise lines, or a comedian for that matter.
Well, fortunately, I never had to work as a musician on the cruise lines. I was always a guest entertainer. I hate the term headliner, but I was a featured act, and so I was self-contained. I started out, even Tom Kubis helped me write some charts that I would play with the band, but the band kept being cut down. It started out with an 8-piece band, and then I could go on and on and on about it. It finally got down to just a piano player, a guitar player, bass player, and a saxophone and a drummer. No, they even eliminated the saxophone. So I all I required on stage is a set of drums, because I do my comedy drum thing, and a couple of mics and a couple of stands, and I play the washboard. But I wrap all of my musical instruments around comedy, so you didn't have to wait too long in between laughs, fortunately. But it was wonderful. I started working probably 1998 or so, around there, and who knows whether I'll ever get another gig on a cruise ship. It might be too soon.
Were you with one cruise lines in particular, or did you do several?
Pretty much Holland America, but I got an opportunity to work on pretty much all of them: Silver Seas and Oceania, and Seven Seas or Seven Seas, or but Holland America was pretty much the best stages that I worked on, because the audience was the kind of audience that I like. There are not very many young people. Not that I.
Well, I understand. It just has to do with our type of humor. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Royal Caribbean and NCL ships that I worked on, it was pretty crazy. I even auditioned for the Disney Cruise Line, but they never hired me, which is kind of strange. But probably because they wanted you to have a kiddie act and then an adult act. But meaning, you know, but
right.
even I have a female comedian friend that works there all the time, and her act is pretty adulty. I mean, if you know.
So they wanted you to have a blue act and a clean act.
Well, that's what they would like for you to have, but I never developed the blue act.
Well, I know, in fact,
you know that most comedians can stand around a campfire and tell jokes that would clear the state.
I know that in your press pack, you talk about that you're like one of the number one calls for appropriate humor and for family-friendly humor, and that's a great statement, by the way.
Well, sure. It also is it's like putting the blinders on a horse. So you have to look down a very narrow path, and hence it kept me in this narrow field, and kept me out of television because I was not a monologist. I was pretty much more of a prop comic, a variety artist.
No, I understand. Yeah, it's what's now you will admit to. Well, maybe you will admit to it once I bring it up, but you're much too modest to talk about the fact that doing clean humor is you have to really be funny. You don't have that crutch to lean on.
I wish I knew the psychology behind it. I've tried to learn and figure out why is it that punching up a joke with an F-bomb or an S-bomb or a D-bomb or a B-bomb, all those. I watched Jerry Van Dyke when Doug and I were playing in his backup band. We watched him try to cut those words out of his act when he would go into the main room. They didn't want you to use any, especially not the F-bomb, but the S-bomb and the B-bomb. And when he took the punch out with those words out, the joke fell flat. And yeah,
I know that Jerry also was altered quite often on stage with his alcohol, but I would imagine that would make it tough also. Well,
he was as funny as anybody I'd ever seen on stage. And when I started working at the Improv, and it was tough to go up on the stage and only do 5 minutes. And if you had to follow Robin Williams or you had to follow some of the other great comedians that were there, you would get an 8:30 or a 9 o'clock spot, and then Robin Williams would wander in and he'd do an hour, and then the names are escaping me, but you all of a sudden you'd find yourself at maybe 1 o'clock in the morning and there'd be 3 drunk people left, and so it was really tough. Yeah,
as you know, a lot of the public and a lot of laymen don't understand the life of a comedian. That it's not fun, especially when you're in the trenches and going from the hee-haw to the Laugh Factory to the Ice House, and the amount of 3 a.m. sets you're doing.
Yeah.
For people who really not care.
Well, everybody's trying to get into TV and into motion pictures and all, and what the average person thinks, I think I'm pretty funny, I'll come to Hollywood or to New York, and it shouldn't take much until they step up on stage in that first couple minutes that they don't really have material or they don't really know who they are. It's as frightful as staring a bear down in an open field.
Yeah, and that's a good statement there. If they don't know who they are,
yeah.
It's kind of like what they say to writers. to be a successful writer, you have to write what you know.
Hmm.
And that's very much like knowing who you are as a comedian.
Yeah.
And if you're not sincere about your experiences and what your line is about, people don't buy it.
Well, you have to take a huge chance to tell the truth because you're not going to please everybody all the time. And in recent years, now it's getting dangerous because people take offense and they will physically harm you or try to trash you on social media. And it's just not worth it. Thank goodness I'm at the end of the rope and not trying to climb up at the beginning of the rope like we were back when we were kids, Dan.
Well, I know. I was saying on an earlier interview that my mom was a Republican, my dad was a Democrat, and they managed to survive without a whole lot of hassle. There was an age when we were kids when it was okay to disagree.
Yeah.
And boy, do we need that in our society today.
Well, my grandfather in Chicago, he was a Republican, and when he died, and he's been voting Democratic ever since.
I like it.
He's my yav senor.
Oh, that is really good. It's kind of like one of the jokes I wrote for Doug. I don't know if he ever used it, but it was, if the Catholic Church really wanted the priests to be celibate, they should require them to get married.
That's true. That's true.
When he did that whole, you can tell when somebody's Protestant, or that was to be a tag on at the end of that routine.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It's lovely. Now let's what else would you like to say? To be honest with you, I'm not going to just sit here and vamp. I would love to have you give some words of wisdom to the watching public and what it takes to be a great entertainer. I think one of the things you said that was really a truism, and that we just got done talking about, is being true to yourself, and the audience will get it. I bring up Janis Joplin and Joe Cocker, and the people who are revered because they can't help being who they are.
Sure.
As a performer, and those who go out there and try to be disingenuous to their audience always suffer.
Well, I just hope that that the entertainment world as we have known it in the past doesn't slip totally down the toilet all the way, because who would ever think that in one day they could shut down all of sports, all of entertainment, from Disneyland to the Carnegie Hall, but it has happened. And those lights that burn on the stage, that they keep a light burning on the stage. I know that the theatrical people, when you leave, you never leave the stage dark. You always have a light burning. They're having to change them now, and I hope that that it will come back, because without entertainment and without humor, it's going to be a very dark world for us.
Yeah. Do you know Bob Ringwald?
I know the name. Don't know Bob personally. Yeah. I don't think.
Of course, other than being Molly's dad, he was also a very much a mover and shaker in the Sacramento trad community, and a piano player. And he and I were talking about the fact that he says, Dan, I made my living playing pianos at bars and speakeasies and jazz festivals, and that was my entire life. He goes, I couldn't do that today. I would have lost my house and lost my wife and not been able to feed myself in today's environment. And he says, I really fear for today's musicians for that reason. And that kind of hits home,
Sure does.
Fortunately, I married a nurse. So.
You did? Well, good for you. I married a dancer.
Oh, I understand.
Well, I always say you'll never know what it's like to be married to a can-can girl who can do a cartwheel and jump splits into bed.
Talking about can-can girls and the Golden Horseshoe, Westie was telling me about things that used to happen on that stage. Like Banu's last day, I guess, he pulled a prank on her, and there were a lot of pranks being pulled on that stage. You got any memories of that?
Well, The worst prank that was pulled on me was at Walt Disney World when I was doing the Diamond Horseshoe Review. And my last show, I had 245s that were real Colt 45s in my holster when I'm doing the Pecos Bill thing. And those that would remember Pecos Bill, when he caught those crooked villains, he knocked out all his fillings. And then I had white lima beans that I would spit, and the band would take ping pong paddles and knock them out in the audience. Just a great show. Well, this last show that I did, when I pulled my guns out, they had taped roses down the barrel of the guns and taken the shells out of there. So the timing was off with the guns. And then when I put the lima beans in my mouth, and when I came out, I felt something melting in the lima beans, and I thought they'd put alum or some chemical in there. Well, they had put a whole bottle of aspirin, white aspirin. And so I must have had 30 white aspirin in my mouth. And so that was pretty scary. Yeah, sometimes the joke pullers don't realize that it's not necessarily funny to the person that you're pulling it on. And the audience didn't understand what was going on. So I always say, if you offend one, you offend too many. And but lots of, Westie and Ralph pulled the joke with the whoopee cushion on Jerry King at the Golden Horseshoe, and that was not a wise thing to do.
Yeah, in fact, Ralph talked about that in his interview earlier.
Yeah,
about that exact moment.
How I got back into the Class of 27 show. So, and Ralph and I have been very, very good friends throughout these years, and I attribute him to teaching me how to play the washboard. So God bless Ralph Reynolds and his brother John too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dick, this has been great fun, man.
Thank you for inviting me. I hear my phone going off, and there's my camp captain is calling me, so I'm going to have to say goodbye.
Well, great. And for anybody that I might have known from my days at the camp, make sure to say hi for me.
Well, I will do that. And just remember what Noah said to his wife on the ark.
What did he say, pray tell?
Do not let the elephants see what the rabbits are doing. Adios, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan shows new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.